Hi, I'm Steve from Nice Smile, and I thought today I'd give you a few tips on how you can get great images of children yourself in a school setting, a nursery setting, which is something you might need to do from time to time. Now, the first tip is turn the blinking flash off. If you want to make nasty photos of kids, just keep the flash on. Those little beastly flashes next to the lens go zap, zap, and they wash out the face and the eyes go red. You know, you've seen it, it looks horrible. Turn the flash off. You can use flash in certain circumstances. I'm going to talk about bounce flash later. So use available light, point number one. What sort of light should you use? Daylight is always good, and especially if it's coming from windows. So if you're indoors, get your subject near a window so that the window is, say, to the side. Not exactly to the side, because then you get a dark side and a light side, but sort of, 45 degrees or something like that. So that is a good source of light. It's nice and soft. You don't want sunlight. You want nice soft daylight coming in. Okay, next, what are you going to take the pictures with? If you use a camera rather than a tablet, you will get better results. Now, I'm going to talk to people who haven't got a camera yet and are thinking about getting one. I suggest you get a full frame camera. That means that the sensor inside is not a weeny little thing. It's a decent size that actually has an optical effect. It doesn't just give you more pixels, it has an optical effect that I'll talk about in a minute called depth of field, which is how out of focus the background is going to be. And you want that out of focus background if you're photographing just one child. And I know that a lot of nurseries like to photograph a child doing stuff because then they can show the mum, how wonderful a day that child has had. So with cameras, I suggest getting something, not necessarily this model because this is a bit expensive. This is a professional one. And I'm not being paid by Sony to say this, but they've just brought out something called the A7C. The A7C is a small camera, but with a big sensor in it. That would be ideal for a nursery to have, but you need to couple it with a special lens. Now, what do I mean by special lens? A lot of cameras come with a kit lens, which is designed to just about do everything reasonably well, but it does nothing particularly brilliantly. So I would suggest a prime lens, not a zoom lens. Now, what's a prime lens? A prime lens means that it is a fixed magnification. You can't turn a ring and it zooms in. That doesn't happen with prime lenses. You have to physically move nearer or further back. Now, that might seem like a pain, but if you want to get nice pictures of kids, you need to isolate them from the background. It becomes more difficult with groups of children, but let's imagine you've got to photograph one child doing one thing, maybe two children, but let's talk about one for a minute. So you want a lens on the front, and I put a label on there, 35mm, not to be confused with 35mm film from the old days. 35mm is a measure of the focal length or the magnification. Why do I say 35mm lens? Because it gives you a little bit of wide angle feel, so you can get some context for what they're doing. I like portraits, close-up portraits, but I also love the feel you get from a 35mm lens where you get a bit of context, shows what's going on around them. And this lens says 1.8 at the top. What does that 1.8 mean? That is the maximum aperture, the maximum size of that iris inside that lets light in. Now, the bigger that is, or the smaller the number is, the more light will come in, and the narrower the depth, the more blurry the background is behind. You can see it's a little bit blurry behind me. At the moment, I've got mine set to f2. This will be even more blurry than that at 1.8. So choose a prime lens. 35mm is good. If you want to go closer in, you can zoom in using a trick on these cameras that allow you to get in closer digitally. And I've set that up on this button, so I still, because you can never go wider. Once you've got a longer lens, like a 50mm, you can't go to 35, it's impossible. But you can do it the other way around. Another good reason to have a 35mm lens. So get a camera, not a tablet. Get a lens with a large aperture, which has got a small number, like 1.8, 1.4 is really good, but a bit pricey, so 1.8 is enough. I've talked about turning flash off, talked about cameras and sensor sizes and prime lenses. If you have to use a tablet and it's got portrait mode on, it's a cheat way of doing the same thing. So it will sort of pretend to isolate the background. It will isolate the background in another way, so you can do that. Turn that mode on if you have to use a tablet. Now, I've talked a bit about lighting and using window light. But what if there isn't a window? What if it's inconvenient? Well, with these cameras, you can get these sort of flashes. And I recommend you get one that slots on the top of the camera. So you can just slot it on like that. And it's got the ability, and now I can't do it for some strange reason. Oh, it's because it's backwards. I mean, that's the mode a lot of people use it in. Zap, it's not bad. You can bounce it straight off the ceiling, not bad. You can actually turn it like that, an angle, and put the little card up, and then you get some light going up, some light bouncing forward, getting better. Or if you look around and think, where's the nearest white wall? You can bounce it off a white wall, half off a ceiling. You can bounce it anywhere you like. What you're looking for is a nice big white area, because then it forms a nice soft light that comes back. The bigger the area, the softer the light. You can't bounce it off a ceiling 5 miles away if you're in a school hall. Forget it, it won't work. If you're in a school hall, you know, you're restricted to this. But if you're in a normal classroom, side lights in my mind always looks better than light coming down. So if you're quite close to your subject, it ain't gonna look very good. You want to be doing it there or even behind you. So these things are great, and you can put it on an automatic mode and it will take care of the lighting. So these are very good, and I recommend you get one. This is called a Godox. It's not that pricey. There's a lot on the market now. If you get a proper genuine Sony one, it will cost you 4 times the amount. Again, I'm not getting paid by Godox. So that is pretty much all my tips. Flash off unless you've got an on-camera flash that you can bounce around. Camera, full frame ideally, prime lens ideally, 35mm is my recommendation. If you're using a tablet, put it on portrait mode, lighting, window light or bounce flash. Have a great time. I hope those tips help.